You think the mind is safe, private, protected. But what happens when it becomes a laboratory? What happens when scientists look at a human being and see an object to dissect, a subject to manipulate? This isn't fiction. These aren't movie plots. These are real psychological experiments that went further than they ever should have. Let's begin with one of the most infamous cases, the Stanford Prison Experiment. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo wanted to understand how people behave in prison settings, so he created one from scratch. He transformed the basement of Stanford University into a mock prison. Volunteers were randomly assigned to two roles, guards and prisoners. No one expected what happened next. Within hours, the guards began to assert dominance, shouting, mocking, humiliating. The prisoners began to break. Some cried, some rebelled, some completely shut down. And Zimbardo, he watched. He didn't stop it, because he wanted to see what would happen when power goes unchecked. It was supposed to last 2 weeks. He stopped it on day 6. Why? Because the psychological damage was becoming real. People were losing their sense of self in just a few days. And that's the haunting part. They weren't bad people. They were ordinary students. But the environment changed everything. Next, let's talk about Milgram's obedience study. Picture this. You're brought into a lab. You meet another participant, a kind-looking stranger. You're told he'll be taking a test. Every time he gets a question wrong, you have to administer an electric shock. The voltage increases with every mistake. You hear his screams. You hear him beg. You hear him go silent. But the researcher in the lab coat calmly says, "Please continue." What would you do? Most people believed they'd refuse, but Milgram's results were disturbing. Over 65% of participants delivered what they believed were lethal shocks, just because someone in authority told them to. They weren't evil. They were obedient. And that's what made it terrifying, because under the right conditions, anyone could be. Let's go even darker. The Monster Study, Davenport, Iowa. A researcher named Wendell Johnson wanted to test the psychological causes of stuttering. So he took 22 orphan children. Half received praise and encouragement for their speech. The other half were belittled, humiliated, told they were defective, told their speech was bad even when it wasn't. The result? Some of those children who had spoken normally developed lifelong speech problems. They were emotionally scarred by what was done in the name of science. It was called the Monster Study for a reason, and most people have never even heard of it. Now let's talk about one that feels more like a horror story than history. The Aversion Project. 1970s, South Africa. During apartheid, the military forced gay soldiers into treatment programs. The government funded psychological experiments disguised as therapy. In reality, it was torture, electroshock treatments, chemical castration, forced sex reassignment surgeries, all to cure something that was never an illness. Hundreds of lives were shattered, all with the approval of authority and silence of science. There were no consent forms, no choice, just punishment wrapped in the language of psychology. And then there's Project MK Ultra, a CIA-led mind control experiment during the Cold War. Yes, it was real. Yes, the US government did it. They gave people LSD without their knowledge. They laced drinks in hospitals, prisons, and universities. They wanted to see if they could break the human mind, reprogram it, control it. Some subjects experienced psychosis. Some committed suicide. The records. Most were destroyed, but enough leaked to show what had happened. The terrifying truth? The human mind wasn't sacred. It was just another battlefield in the war for control. And these are just some of the experiments that were real. Others involved separating newborn monkeys from their mothers, just to watch what loneliness does to a brain. Others locked children in rooms with no human contact for weeks, all in the name of understanding behavior. But what they really revealed was this. Curiosity has a dark side. Science, without ethics, becomes a weapon. And the line between research and cruelty, it's thinner than you think. So the next time someone says it's just psychology, remember this. Behind some of the most respected institutions, some of the most terrifying things have been done. Not in secret labs, not in faraway lands, but in classrooms, hospitals, government buildings, funded by grants, applauded by peers, until someone finally looked back and asked, at what cost? Because understanding the human mind is important, but not when it means destroying it in the process.